Raider Nation, welcome back to another edition of Silver and Black. Today, we put this out a little bit early, same day release on Wednesday as Mo and I sit here and record the show, getting ready for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours out there. And again, if you're going to enjoy time with your family, do so and have fun there and enjoy it and be thankful for everything that you have in your life. And that includes your problems. Yes, problems actually help us get better. Challenges do that for us human beings. So stay with them, have a good time, and just remember how thankful we are in this country, despite its issues and despite some of the ups and downs. We're lucky to be here, and we're all lucky to be talking to you today as we get here. I'm Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my co-host Mo Moton, and also he is a senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, where you can catch all his work on the NFL and his Raiders specific work. You can catch up on sportsnot.com as well. Follow him on x.com at Momoton. That's MOEMOTON. And get ready for pictures of rainbow cake over the holiday. And we're all here for it. And again, follow me on X as well. I almost called it Twitter again. It's hard to get rid over that one. And I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB today. And a thank you to all of you. If you're working on this Thanksgiving holiday, thank you for your sacrifice there too. And a shout out to all of our friends. And we have lots of listeners in the military who are all over the world listening to Silver and Black today. So thank you for your service there too. And being away from your family, being with your military family. All right, Mo, we get back here and getting ready for Thanksgiving. We got the turkey on the video. By the way, our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Yes, we love BetUS. We're thankful for BetUS, and we're thankful for this too. We get to give you a deal. Yes, 150% sign-up bonus from BetUS and Silver and Black today. That's right, up to $2,000. Hey, 50%. You got to like that. All you got to do is use our promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Start playing today. Thanks to the folks again at BetUS. It's all good. All right, Mo, let's start with this. I'm fascinated. And I know, usually when a team is struggling or you have a need and a player becomes available, most fans, well, what about, does that person make sense for us? The Daniel Jones thing is interesting to me because obviously we saw Gardner Minshew, season-ending collarbone injury. I've broken my collarbone and it still hurts, so I get it. He's out. Aiden O'Connell's going to start in Kansas City on Friday. So that's all taken care of. But that still is, there's a need for a quarterback. And when Daniel Jones became available last week at the Giants, cut him, released him, and he cleared waivers, the Raiders were reportedly interested. And then Daniel Jones said, nah, I'm good. I'd rather go somewhere and be a backup and try to win a championship. And Baltimore's been bantied around. Some other names have been bantied around as well. And there's two parts of the story, and I want to get your reaction to it. Number one is, I get the need. You're 2-9. You're not going anywhere, the Raiders, right? So that's the way it is. It's a developmental portion of the season now. But you need bodies. If a quarterback goes down and you don't have, as we talked about last episode, you don't have the confidence in Desmond Ridder, then it would be good to have another veteran quarterback there. But the Daniel Jones thing, I don't get the Raiders' interest there so much, other than just, hey, a conversation's a conversation. But Daniel Jones saying, no, I fully understand. And I saw some Raider fans sort of call him out and say, oh, well, you're too good. You'd rather go be a backup, blah, blah, blah. I think it goes back to something you said last show, Mo, is that the Raiders, not only are they the get well team for people on the schedule, but the reputation right now in the current situation doesn't lend itself to attract people that might have some upside. Although I've watched Daniel Jones a lot and I'm not a big fan. Give me your thoughts on this whole conversation back and forth, not only between the Raiders' interest, but also kind of the reaction to it.
So the only reason I felt like Daniel Jones might have been on the Raiders' radar is because assistant quarterbacks coach Fred Walker worked with him at Duke, right? So there's a connection there. And usually when you see a quarterback or any player released, they usually go somewhere where they know someone, where they're familiar with one of the coaches on staff. So that was the only connection that was there. But other than that, Daniel Jones for the Raiders never made sense for either party. From the Raiders' perspective, if you're bringing in Daniel Jones right now, he's going to have to learn a new offense. He just had a poor 3/4 of a season with the Giants. So he's coming in cold, having to learning a new offense. Is he going to help you get to the playoffs? No. Look at you. Look at what your record is. And if you're thinking about it, Aiden O'Connell has been there. Now he hasn't played a full game. Well, he actually played one full game, but not under Scott Turner. It was under former offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. So you already have a developmental quarterback there. I know Daniel Jones is more mobile, but is he going to be the answer? Because you're probably going to draft a quarterback anyway. So if you're Daniel Jones, you want to go someplace where a team is going to draft a rookie quarterback and that rookie quarterback is going to be groomed to start? I would say no. And it makes more sense for Daniel Jones to go to a team has a more stable offense or a high-end play caller, because he's trying to wash off the I'm an awful quarterback stink. And you don't do that by going to a team that has no run game, with a head coach who's clearly frustrated with his offensive play calling. And we talked about it. Turner Pierce not subtly, but called out his play calling and said, he'd rather not throw the ball 30, 40 times. But the Raiders, that's been their MO. So he's clearly frustrated with the way the offense is flowing. Do you want to go into a situation like that if you're Daniel Jones? No, you want to go to a more steady situation because you're trying to work your way back into being a starter. Scott, show me the bad quarterback who went to a bad football team and revived his career. It doesn't work like that. Look at what happened with Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Spent some time in San Francisco, now a starter with the Vikings. Geno Smith flamed out here in New York, spent some years as a backup with the Chargers and the Seattle Seahawks. Now he's a starter. You don't have to jump back into the water and start right away to get a job back. You could be a backup for a year or two and eventually work your way up the ladder and be a starter. It just never made sense for Daniel Jones from that perspective. And as I explained, it didn't make sense for the Raiders to bring in Daniel Jones at this point in the season when they're 2-9.
Exactly. And the fact that the Raiders are going to target a young quarterback in the draft, I think it's an absolute must. They have to do whatever they have to do to get there. You want a veteran and the whole idea, but the reality is I don't know what the outs are. I got to do some research on that, but the outs I don't think there is one for Gardner Minshew until 2 years, unless you just pay him to go away. But my guess is he'll be back. I think him and Aiden O'Connell will be back next year, and whoever they draft, you're going to have those three quarterbacks and maybe a fourth. We'll see what happens. But it was just interesting to me because I've watched Daniel Jones a lot. And while he has had moments, and yes, he's been in a weird situation, dysfunctional at times with the Giants, I've never thought he's that good. And he got paid a lot of money. That's not his fault. I don't blame Daniel Jones for taking the money from the Giants. If they're going to pay you that, the Giants were stupid. It was a terrible move by the Giants, but they did it. That's not his fault. That's the Giants' fault. So we'll see. But I just thought it was kind of interesting, and I joked about it and said, look, they're looking for love in all the wrong places, and there's nothing that's going to this idea that that the Raiders are going to find the modern era's Jim Plunkett. That's hard, right? It doesn't happen very often. Yes, there's examples of it, but in this case, I didn't think it was anything near. The other report I want to talk to you about, Mo, was interesting from over at Sporting News, and this is a name I didn't think of, although I've watched him several times this year in different games, especially the other night in the snow, was the idea that the Raiders are going to be in need of a running back as well. We know they'll probably draft that in the draft later on as well. But they also, in this report from Evan Massey of Sports Illustrated, it says that Nick Chubb could be a guy that could be a good fit for the Raiders next year if they address the quarterback situation, if they bolster that offensive line a little bit and get the right play caller in there to get that moving. Thoughts on Nick Chubb? Listen, he came off the injury. He's looked pretty good this year in Cleveland. Cleveland's an awful football team as well, despite the win against Pittsburgh and Jameis Winston's golden pregame and postgame interviews, as they always are. But what do you think about Nick Chubb and thinking about that for next year?
No, thank you. I like Nick Chubb, the player, but not for the Raiders and not for next year. Nick Chubb is going to be 29 years old in December. He's averaging a career low 3 yards per carry this year because he's coming off of a significant knee injury.
Yep.
So in all of in all except one game this year, he's averaged about 3.3 yards per carry or less. That's comparable to what the Raiders running backs are doing right now. So I'm going younger at the running back position. I'm
Yes.
not looking for a 29-year-old who's 1 or 2 years removed from a torn ACL. That's no disrespect to Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was great in his prime, but he's a bit past his prime now. And if the Raiders want to add a spark to their run game, I'd want a running back who's more of a natural pass catcher out of the backfield. It's not really Nick Chubb's forte. That's why they had Jerome Ford out there in Cleveland. But Nick Chubb, for me, wouldn't be on my list of priority phrase to sign if I'm the Raiders. Go young, go with a more dynamic running back.
Right. And I think this is the situation with the Raiders where they stand right now, Mo, as well, is the same thing with the quarterback position. You can, and you and I have talked about it, you could turn this thing around relatively fast, but that doesn't mean it has to be veterans and big names, right? Because I think that Nick Chubb going to a team like we saw, now I know it's not fair to compare the two because it's not even in the same class, but we saw what Saquon Barkley did going to the Eagles. The Eagles were a team already there. Yes, they had a rough end last year, but here's a team just removed a few years from a Super Bowl win, perennial playoff team at this point. Look how they're dominating this year after a slow start. And you add that piece at the end, just like we talk about receivers. You add that piece at the end. So a Nick Chubb on a team, I don't know, not that they need him, but like the Bills or somebody like that, or what you saw with Joe Mixon in Houston. Now, Houston's struggling a little bit right now, but when you have a little piece you need to add because you're already ascending and you're already at a place where you're a playoff team and you're trying to get deeper in the playoffs, that makes sense. But agree with you. The Raiders have got to, and I keep saying this over and over again when fans hit me up, which is you have to get rookie contracts, baby. You got to get guys who come in and can do that, because then you can add in some of those needed pieces that you might have a draft year like this year where you don't have a strong class at, let's say, defensive end or tackle or safety or whatever the position of need is. Then you can go out and buy that guy. But in order to do that and to balance out your roster and your contracts, you got to have those key positions and you got to hit on young positions. Look what the Raiders did this year with Brock Bowers. They got an offensive weapon, right? They got Jackson Powers-Johnson. They got one lineman and DJ Glaze even. So to me, that's the method. And that's where I think sometimes we forget, because we hear these names and they're good players, but really it all depends on the situation and the timing.
Not only that, we all know that the running back shelf life, comes and goes pretty quickly. Unless you're one of the top running backs in the league, once you approach that 30 mark, things start to taper off a bit. Now, Derrick Henry's doing his thing, but how many Derrick Henrys are in the league right now?
Mm-hmm.
Saquon Barkley not there yet at 30, but these running backs that produce at that level want bigger contracts. And if you're the Raiders, do you want to spend a bigger contract on a veteran running back where you are in this point of a rebuild, which is going to be year 2 into Tom Telesco? If they wanted to keep a running back who could be a featured guy, you would have resigned Josh Jacobs. I mean, what was the point then of letting Josh Jacobs walk if you're just going to sign an older running back than Josh Jacobs and pay him to a big deal? It just doesn't make any sense. It's hustling backwards.
Yeah.
Go young, because there's so many every year we see it, Scott. A running back that goes in the 3rd round, 4th round, who turns out to be pretty good, and he's playing above his pay grade. And the Raiders just going to have to lean on Tom Telesco and his scouting department to do their job and find that running back who can uplift their backfield, because Alexander Madison, I believe, is coming off the books. Zamir White will still be on the books. Who knows what's going to happen with his future, depending on the coaching staff. But they can find a good complement, even if they want to keep Zamir White. Again, a guy who can catch out of the backfield on 3rd downs.
Right. And by the way, before we hit the first break here, did you see this viral? And I forgot which reporter or who it was that started it, where they listed the 3 running backs. Look at, the Giants let Saquon Barkley go. The Raiders let Josh Jacobs go. And I forgot who the 3rd one was. And so I had a lot of people hit me up saying, oh, see, we should have signed. And I said, no, because look at all the teams that they went to, Mo. They were all playoff teams. Right? Do you think Josh Jacobs, he might be doing better than the current Raiders running backs, but would he be doing what he's doing in Green Bay? And would Saquon Barkley do what he's doing in New York? that you see in Philly? No. So I get why people bring that up, because these guys leave their old team and then they go on and they do really well. But again, that's because they're behind better offensive lines. They have better play callers. They're on better teams overall.
And that was the reason why people were saying that Saquon Barkley may be washed. They looked at him run with the Giants and they said, he's good, but not great. Now, all of a sudden, he's getting 255 yards behind the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Yeah, because he's with a better team.
Yes.
If you're a quality talent, you go to a better team, typically you're going to have better production. So there's no real buyer's remorse here, even if you're the Raiders, because as you said, would Josh Jacobs be doing what he's doing under Luke Getsy and that ground attack? He'd probably be able to do better than Zamir White and Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah, but he wouldn't be, rushing for the yards that he's rushing for right now in Green Bay.
No, and I don't think the Raiders would have any more wins. Even if we were generous and gave them one extra win, they'd still be 3-8. So what's again, spending all that money on a contract and committing yourself to a running back? And God bless Josh Jacobs. I'm glad he's having a good year. He deserves that, and being on a team that's got a shot. So very, very good. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, and actually, Mo, you're going to help me do in our first break. You're going to help me do a quick Raiders Chiefs parlay. We're going to put some betting together as we go to BetUS. Again, our video brought to you by BetUS. And when we come back, we'll talk about this Chiefs Raiders game on Black Friday. And but we'll get into the bet as well. And again, the video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Okay, so we have here, I'm looking at this game, Mo. Okay, so we have Raiders and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are now 13-point favorites, as you can see, as I'm here on BetUS. By the way, again, you guys got to check out BetUS, 150% sign-up bonus using our promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Up to $2,000 on that deposit, by the way, and you're going to get a 50% bonus. And BetUS, let me tell you, they are awesome. Not only will you see that when we show you the website here, but mobile app is great. Quick payouts. They even have customer service folks who will guide you if you need any help. So it's pretty awesome. So we're going to talk about this. Okay, Mo. So here we are, and I want to get your take on this. The Chiefs 13. I don't know if you saw that stat that when the Raiders are more than 10-point underdogs to the Chiefs, they tend to do better. But this is a different team, and this is a 2-9 team. And I think you have the situation with the Christmas game last year. The Chiefs are not happy about that. What do you think about this point spread?
I actually released the betting column, or will release the betting column later today, the Bleacher Report betting column.
Okay.
And we actually favored the Las Vegas Raiders covering that spread. And here was the reason why. It's because, one, the Chiefs haven't really blown out a bunch of teams this year. The only team that they've beaten by more than 10 points is the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football, and I believe week 5. That's the only team that they've beaten by more than 10 points. Number two, and I've said this week after week, say what you want about the Raiders, but they have not given up on Antonio Pierce. They have not given up on the season. They're playing hard. So they will get you that backdoor cover. They had better sweating. I know they had me sweating last week. I bet in favor of Denver covering the spread last week. And the Raiders almost covered with a late touchdown. But they did lose 29-19 if you're a betting person. But if you're looking at the Raiders and their tendencies at the end of these games, they've either scored late touchdowns, which you would call garbage time, where the game is already out of hand, or they're able to cover some of these spreads, some of these bigger spreads late in football games. I remember they covered late against the Kansas City Chiefs when they played the first time. They covered against the Rams late. So when I see this 13-point spread, usually if you're experienced better, you'd know that when you see that big of a number, typically you want to side with the underdog, because unless the team is ready to just have their foot mashed on the gas pedal for 4 quarters, typically the underdog covers that.
Yeah, and so and I agree with you too. And actually, I took the Raiders last week, which was a mistake. I was on the opposite side of you.
I was on the opposite side.
As a backdoor cover, and so I lost on this one. But I do like this one. What do you think of this over under 42.5? And I sort of like the under here, but at the same time, the Raiders defense and kind of still with the injuries and what we saw. I mean, look, they gave up 29 points to Bo Nix and the Broncos, and now you're going to be facing Patrick Mahomes, who still has problems with wide receivers, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He's able to create more than that. On this one, it's like my gut wants to go with the under, but for some reason, the over also speaking to me. Tell me, oh wise one, Mr. Betting column dude, what do you think of this? Because we're betting it together here, so you got to walk me through this.
I'm taking the over for the reason I just explained. The Raiders are good for that late touchdown in a game that's sometimes out of hand. You think, okay, the game's over. But the Raiders will come back and they'll score that late. They'll have that late score to push the score for cosmetic reasons. And you're thinking, oh, the Raiders didn't get blown out that bad. Well, it's because they had that late touchdown. The other thing, you can look at it from the other side as well, that if the Chiefs were to just give the Raiders this massive beatdown in Kansas City for beating them on Christmas last year in Kansas City, then they can actually push you over and carry most of the weight on that one. But I don't see like the Raiders finishing with 10 points because the Chiefs defense, I'll tell you this goes into my analysis for the upcoming game Friday. The Chiefs pass defense has regressed over the past few weeks. They've had an injury or two in the secondary. Their pass defense has been leaky as of late. So Aiden O'Connell, though he's in his has his fourth offensive play caller in 2 years, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, and the Chiefs struggle against covering tight ends. The Raiders could actually score 2 or 3 touchdowns, and if they do that, this is easy. This is an easy over.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Okay, so Mo, here you go. If I lose, it's all you. I'm putting $200.
Put it on my shoulder, Scott.
See, I'm glad though. No, your points, like the under for me, I was gravitating towards that, but the way you laid it out, and again, you got to read Mo's piece from Sports Illustrated that's out later today on this, but that makes all the sense in the world to me, and I do think Aiden O'Connell makes that offense move better. So I like the Raiders scoring more points. I don't think they win the game, like you said, backdoor cover. So here's what we're doing: we're putting $200 to win $491.56. So we got
that one. We lose that one. Someone's not getting their Christmas present.
Yeah, well, it's just, my kids will understand. So Santa didn't come. No, my kids are too old for that now. But Santa's always, hey, he's always there. All right, so 200 to win 491 up on BetUS. So here we go. We're placing my bet. We're confirming my bet. You can see this all on the video, and there we go. And if we win, I buy Mo a avocado smoothie, and everything is good. But the point again is make sure you check out our good friends at BetUS, and reminder, 150% sign up bonus up to $2,000 on that first deposit, baby. 125%. They're going to give you extra on the second and third deposit up to $2,000. Just use our code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. That is the great folks over at BetUS. Again, BetUS. Make sure you check them out. 150%. YouTube150 is the code. Thanks. All right. Welcome back to Silver and Black today, the second segment. We are back with you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and we appreciate you being with us. Video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Make sure you use that code YouTube150. Get that 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000 just by using the code YouTube150. Also, we are an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. I forgot to ask you. You said that the cardinal sin in the broadcast world is I need to ask this up front. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Make sure you look for Silver and Black today. Subscribe, rate, and review the show as well. We certainly appreciate that. It helps us out significantly, so thank you for that. And it's Scott Gulbransen, Mo Moton back with you. Also, real quick, I got to get one more thing in. I had this company reach out to me, Mo, this company out of Oregon. And if you like an adult beverage from time to time, and whether that's, beer, wine, whatever, but beer cans or bottles, like I drink beer out of the bottles mostly these days. I've advanced in my age. When I was in college, I didn't care if it was in Tupperware. I would have drank it. But anyway, so they sent me this note and they said, hey, we got these really cool drinkware things. They're called puffins. And I'm like, puffins? Like the little bird? But anyway, the folks at Puffins sent me these. I gotta come in the full screen here so that people can see these. But these are like koozies, right? You see, but they're little jerseys. And so the can goes right in here. It's insulated. And the guy who started it said he was sitting around a campfire one day. He said, what if I could make a sleeping bag for my beer, right? And so this is great because most koozies are just that neoprene. It doesn't really keep your drink cold. But this puffin thing is cool, and it's jersey. They do not have a silver and black one. I've told them they've got to, because Raider Nation will not stand for it if you don't. But anyway, they have this. So here's one that's like a jersey. They have different colors. They have a couple colleges, mostly the West Coast, because they're up in Oregon, Oregon, Washington State, stuff like that. So they have a college series. But they have this one, and then they have this one, which I love. And this is the kind of sweater I could see Mo like wearing to a party, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
Look at this one.
Oh, my God.
Look at that football sweater. So this is another one that they have, but you could check them out. I'm going to put a code up here so you can see Puffin drinkware there. Oops, I went to the wrong place. If I could get to the right place and do directing my show right. Okay, there it is. So there's a QR code that you can go check out Puffins actually. And these are really cool. I mean, it's gift time, and if you got a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, whatever, these are pretty cool. Yeah, side piece, yeah, whatever it is, degenerate kid you buy beer for at the 7-Eleven, whatever. But anyway, these puffins, and the reason I bring these on is not just to do an ad for them, but we're going to be giving away some of these next week. So stay tuned for that, and then you can either keep it for yourself, or you can give it as a gift. It's a nice stocking stuffer, right, Mo? Do you still have a stocking?
Don't do stockings at this stage of my life. People just kind of say, hey, here's your gift. They just kind of hand it to me. Past that stage, still have a Christmas tree, but no stockings.
There you go. We have stockings. My wife, we have stockings, and like my daughter just got married last month. And so my wife's like, well, in our new place, she's like, I'm not sure where to stick the stockings. And I'm like, well, do we really need to? And she's like, gave me this look like the death stare. And then she said, yeah, we need more room now because we got to put up Jackson's. That's my new son-in-law. I'm like, what? Yeah, he's part of the family now. I'm like, oh my God. So then we have 5 kids. So if they all have, we're not going to have 20 stockings and nobody living in the house by that time. So anyway, but these are great stocking stuffers. You can just scan the code there on the screen. If you're listening to us, you can check it out at puffindrinkware.com. But good, even for kids to put their, cans in their sparkling water or their soda, whatever they're drinking. So anyway, there you go. All right, so let's get back into this
really quick. Sorry,
yes,
Scott,
yes.
Do you remember the Raiders Chiefs commercial where the guy shows up to his wife or girlfriend's home and he's got like the Raider sweater? Yes. It's got the lights on it. I was just thinking, Scott, you joked about me wearing that sweater. I'm more of a black sweater guy. I'm more of that guy showing up to my significant other's house with the Christmas lights on my sweater, and she's like a Chiefs fan or a Chargers fan, and she's like, dude, did you have to wear the Raiders sweater to the gathering?
That's funny. I've never been into the whole ugly sweater thing, right? But we're going to one of these parties, and I ordered this one, and I'm not going to tell you because I'll wear it on the show as we get closer to Christmas, but I like it a lot.
It's got AP's face on it, doesn't it?
Yes, and see, now the sweater police behind you, they're on their way to get me. You can hear the sirens.
Said the wrong thing.
It's so bad.
Arrest him.
The sounds of New York City, thanks to Moton, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
That's it.
It wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be New York City if you didn't hear sirens and dogs barking at
correct
9:30 a.m.
and horns.
Horns.
Yeah, horns. Got to have horns. Okay.
Motorcycles.
There you go. It's holiday time. Mo and I are just chatting with you. It's like a fireside chat. By the way, Murph and the gang over at Raiders Fan Radio on Wednesday had their little fireside chat. It was actually good. And they were like, oh, they're apologizing because it's not their new set because Murph moved. I loved it. It was awesome. They're sitting there. Michelle's got her blanket on. She looks like she's just waiting for, Santa to come down and eat his cookies, all that stuff. But anyway, it was funny. It was good times. Anyway, okay. So let's get to this Chiefs game. We talked about it during the break. If you missed if you're listening on audio, we did a video ad for BetUS where Mo and I talked about the game. But Mo, the Raiders come into this one 13-point underdogs, and I don't think anybody's going to give them a chance. I don't give them a chance to win the game. This is not Christmas last year. This is not a team on an emotional high after the Antonio Pierce taking over last year for Josh McDaniels. I think there's a lot of difference there. I think the Chiefs, while the Chiefs have not played their best, still struggle with offense, and their defense is moving a little bit backwards. I think this game in the cold weather in Kansas City, it's supposed to be about 32 degrees. I think it's a tough one. I think they keep it closer than maybe some of the prognosticators will want to admit. But if you look at this game, how can the Raiders make this a close game to the point where they could even get within striking distance of maybe upsetting the Chiefs?
Two names, Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. I mentioned him during our betting portion of the show that the Chiefs struggled to cover tight ends. And with Aiden O'Connell in there, I know he's learning a new offense, but he's familiar with Brock Bowers going back to the preseason. I thought he and Brock Bowers had, somewhat of a connection during the preseason. He understands that Brock Bowers is the top pass catching threat now in the Raiders offense, and I think he'll get the ball to him. I think Brock Bowers will have a more active outing than he had last week against the Denver Broncos. And I also talked about the Chiefs secondary being a leaky unit over the past month or so because of an injury or two back there. So Jacoby Myers, I think, should also have a good game. He had, I believe, over 100 yards against the Denver Broncos. So he should continue to roll even with the change at quarterback. So with the Raiders, I understand their run game has been non-existent. Antonio Pierce, as we talked about, wants to run the ball a little bit more. But the way the offense is set up, they're going to have to pass to set up the run. And we talked about that on this show as well. And I think they can do that a bit with the Chiefs. I'm not saying that they'll have the Chiefs sweating it out on the day after Thanksgiving. But I do think the Raiders are going to put up some points, and it may be close for at least a half. Who knows what the second half brings because of the defense and its leaks the Raiders have had. But I do think the Raiders could keep it close for at least 2 quarters.
And that's what I was going to ask you too, that Raiders defense, because we've heard so much about the Chiefs and their offense not really hitting on all cylinders. We heard the same thing last year and they won a Super Bowl. When you look at what they're doing, Patrick Mahomes, again, you saw last week he gets the ball back with 1:39. What does he do? Rattles off a 30-yard run and they end up winning the game. So you look at what they're doing and you look at what's the challenges the Raiders defense faces with injury and with kind of regression. What does that defense have to do? Because for whatever reason, this team and a lot of teams have been unable to ever stop Travis Kelce. And so are they going to be able to do that, number one, Mo? And number two, what are they going to have to do to contain this Chiefs defense as it sits today? Or offense, I should say. Sorry, excuse me.
Well, as far as Travis Kelce is concerned, I would be, and this is going to surprise some people, but I wouldn't be the Raiders shouldn't be too focused on Travis Kelce. I did a piece on this over a Bleacher Report for Fantasy Football and for the betting column. But Noah Gray has had an increasing role with that passing attack. Noah Gray, I believe, has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. So in week 11 and 12, he's had 2 touchdown receptions. So it's not just Travis Kelce at the tight end position. I would guess they're kind of reeling him in a little bit to preserve him for the playoffs. And Noah Gray is getting a lot of shine in that offense as the backup tight end. So if Travis Kelce doesn't get him for 80 yards, it could be Noah Gray. Just keep that in mind. And I said this on the show. Noah Gray is going to be a part of that offense, and the Raiders are going to have to circle him and find out where he is. And they're going to have their safeties and their linebackers on high alert for both Travis Kelce and Noah Gray. The other thing I worry about with the Raiders is it sounds like Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back for this game. So Isaiah Pacheco, I believe, broke his leg. They held him out last week against the Carolina Panthers, but they're saying that Pacheco and Hunt are going to share touches out of that backfield. And we know that some of the issues that the Raiders have had stopping the run, they've been a bit better over the past month, but now you're talking about the Chiefs getting their lead running back and pairing him with Kareem Hunt, who's been pretty good since they picked him up off the scrap heap. So they got to deal with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. I know DeAndre Hopkins is out there. When the Raiders last saw DeAndre Hopkins, it was his first game with the Chiefs. Now he's more settled into the offense. If the Raiders aren't careful, the Chiefs can get it rolling. But as I said, they're not a knockout team. If they can just keep the explosive plays to a minimum, which is easier said than done, of course, when you have Patrick Mahomes back there, they could, I would say, slow them down a bit. They can't. I don't think they're going to stop the Chiefs' offense, but slow them down a bit as long as they can minimize the explosive plays over the top and on the ground.
And you know who I worry about? Not that he's had a stellar season. He's had moments, and I think the guy's got a lot of talent, is Xavier Worthy.
Speed.
Right? The speed there. That's what worries me is in games like this, to your point, where, okay, you're going in on Kelsey, you're watching Hopkins, you're trying to stop the run, and suddenly you got Xavier Worthy with all that speed, leaks over the middle, and boom, right? Big play. So it'll be interesting to see. I know the Raiders will be up for this game. There's no question. It's a huge rivalry game. I expect them to fight hard, and we'll see how the chips fall. If you missed the betting segment that we did in between the two segments on video, Mo and I both picked the Raiders to backdoor cover here. So we bet the Raiders plus 13. And then the over 42.5. We think the Raiders will actually score some points, which would be very nice. After you're all full with that belt loose from Thursday's feast, you get to feast on some football. So we'll see how that goes. All right, we're going to take our final break. When we come back, guess what? It's your show. We're going to get to the Raider Nation mailbag for this Thanksgiving edition of Silver and Black today. And we'll hear what you guys have to say out there about the state of the Raiders, the coaching staff, all that stuff we'll get to right after this break. We are Silver and Black today, not sports. We are Silver and Black today as Odyssey Sports. Hello. Yes, I'm already thinking about that prime rib I'm having. And we appreciate you being with us. We cover the Las Vegas Raiders. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it, rate and review. Video, always brought to you by the folks at BetUS. Don't go anywhere.
Enough of hearing us talk about the Raiders. It's time to hear from you.
Any Oakland Raider fan, Las Vegas Raider fan, stand up.
On this edition of the Raider Nation Mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
Yes, we're back. We're going to hear what you have to say. We've got some calls today. By the way, college football playoff. Mo, what do you think of this first year and all the rankings and all that stuff?
I think the expansion is good for college football because you get fewer fans of programs screaming we were left out. Now, of course, the first team that's left out is just going to complain then. So, how much can you expand it? But I think it's good for college football. It's the conference realignment I still have to get used to. Oregon moving, Big Ten. It's hard to follow that when you're growing up with the conferences, set.
Yeah.
Now I'm still like trying to remember. Okay, what conference does this school go to now? What championship game are they competing in? But I watch college football a lot on Saturday. Of course, we don't talk college football on the show. Not from just the competitive standpoint, but a lot of these players are going to be in the NFL next year. So we're gonna get to see a lot of quality talent on the field over the next few weeks. I know Raider fans will be watching for the quarterbacks, but there are other guys out there who are going to be showcasing their talent.
Yeah, and like you said, there will still be teams left out, and people will be upset about that. But it's much more in line, although smaller, of course, like the NCAA basketball tournament, and that I like that a lot. And I mean, if you asked me back in August, would my alma mater, now I'm wearing my Notre Dame sweatshirt, which is my big college football team, but my alma mater, UNLV, is 22nd ranked in the playoff ranking. Like, they've never been ranked AP or coaches poll before this year, and they have now been 4 weeks. So to me, it's less than a 2% chance that they could make the playoff, but they could go. They're going to play Boise State in the Mountain West Championship if they take care of Reno this week. And if they beat Boise State and a couple other crazy things happen, I'm not saying they'd make it, but they'd be pretty damn close. And even that's exciting for these smaller mid-major conferences who would have no conversation or talk about even being in the national playoff picture at all. So it makes it fun. And teams like Army, of course, they got beat by Notre Dame so badly, but those were teams you would never think about college football playoff before this year. So it's not perfect. They got a lot of work to do still to, I think, fix it, but much more exciting. And for Raider fans too, as we were talking about how the Raiders being out of playoff contention, what do you look for? What do you do? I would watch some college football games and see some of these guys you hear other fans talking about and other analysts talking about that could be targets for the Raiders, and just get to know those guys a little bit. Watch them play. It's fun and keep you positive.
Scott, before you have a pipe dream about the playoffs, just make sure you take care of USC first. Make sure you get over that step before you.
Oh yeah, no, that's yeah. Well, no, you're talking about Notre Dame now. That's different. That's easy. They're 7th right now. They would play the winner of the Ohio State. Who was it? Ohio State was going to play. I forgot now. But Ohio State's going to play Oregon unless one of them loses, which I doubt. In the Big Ten, you talk about conference realignment. Big Ten championship game. Oregon, the number 1 team, is going to play the number 2 team, which is almost like a mini national championship in itself. I mean, that game is going to be huge. So that's what this college football playoff and realignment has done. It's pretty cool. All right, let's get to your calls now. We're going to start out. We're going behind bars first. And I was listening to some Johnny Cash this morning. Folsom Prison. Anyway. Okay. And it was ironic because then I got in to get the calls and it's like, Pastor Mike behind bars. There he is. Here he is
Segway.
Yes, it's called the Segway. Remember that Segway thing, that rider thing that was going to change the world and it didn't do anything? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Here's Pastor Mike.
Scott, Bo, Pastor Mike behind bars. Just got home from Vegas. I thought they played well. I thought they played competitively, considering the fact that, of all the starters. And then we have one starting running back, in there. I mean, there's just a lot. I thought they were competitive. But in the end, yeah, they didn't win. Just makes the draft pick higher if they continue on that trend, which I don't see why they wouldn't. But I thought AP, he's still learning. We'll see if he continues to keep his job. Anyway, I just wanted to call and just give my 2 cents on the game. And on to the next one, I guess. We'll play them Chiefs on Black Friday. We'll see how that goes. All right, guys, you have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Raiders.
Knew that was coming. Pastor Mike behind bars. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend. God bless. And it brings up a good point. And this is where we talk about the Raiders not being a very good football team. That does not mean they don't play well at times. It's the ability to put 4 quarters together that has been the problem all season for the most of the season. Mo, and that's what teams that aren't very good do, right? You see teams like even Carolina, look what they did last week. They hung right in there, but then you can't get it done because you can't finish. You have a 10-minute stretch where you just don't play well. And that's the difference in the NFL, because they're all professional football players. That's the difference in the NFL. Not only rosters being unbalanced, some people having a lot more talent than the others, but also, Mo, it's just playing consistently.
It's wild to me that we're going into week 13 and we can't say that the Raiders have played one full, complete football game from first to fourth quarter. We can't say that about any of their games. Even in the 2 wins that they had, they didn't play a full, complete game. They had to come back against the Ravens. They started off slow against the Cleveland Browns. And a lot of people argue they should have lost the game, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. They won the game. But they haven't played a complete game yet on both sides of the ball for a full 60 minutes. And I'm hoping, even in this lost season, that we at least get to see it at least once or twice where it's like, man, the Raiders from start to finish, they were on it. Offense was moving the ball. Defense was doing their thing. And they just put together a gem of a football game. I just want to see that. I don't, I get the whole tanking and draft position thing. I want to see a complete football game from the Raiders. I'm not saying we'll get it on Black Friday. Maybe we get something close to it. And I'll be satisfied with that, considering how the way the season has gone. But we go back to the betting segment that we did. I'm not expecting the Chiefs to completely throttle the Raiders. I may go back and regret that statement. But as you said, when you have a rivalry game, as the old saying goes, throw the record books out of the window. But as I wrote in my Sportsnet column for today, the Raiders are still fighting, not for just the names on the back of their jerseys, but for Antonio Pierce as well, because they know that his position is not secure. For the guys in that locker room that still support him, they're playing hard. And I don't think this is a game where it's a standalone matchup. You know, a lot of people are going to be watching. You know, you're going against a division rival. You know, if you lose this game, you go 0-5 in the division. This is a team that is not going to lay down. Now, is it enough for them to win, cover? We'll find out. I'm interested to see Aiden O'Connell and what he does in his fourth offense in 2 years. That's another thing I have my eye on, because I think Aiden O'Connell is not going to turn the ball over as Gardner Minshew did. So you're not going to have those back-breaking red zone interceptions, I wouldn't think. So it'll limit, I would say, the Chiefs' extra possessions, and hopefully the Raiders can sustain some drives and put together some touchdown scores.
And the Raider, what I would like to see, you talk about complete games, and we talked about how badly the Raiders have done on takeaways, and Patrick Mahomes does give up the ball. So and we saw it at Christmas last year when they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead.
Jack
so
Jones.
Yes. So to me, taking advantage of the Chiefs also have the highest penalized offensive lineman in the league, the right tackle or right guard. I can't remember which one. I forgot his name. Jawan Taylor. Thank you. So take advantage when you have those opportunities where you back them up or you get a turnover. If they have a chance in this game and to put those 4 quarters together, they have got to capitalize on every turnover, every 3rd and long. That's where Patrick Mahomes becomes so dangerous. It's 3rd and 18, and somehow they get a first down, right? So that's where the Raiders defense, I really think, like they did last year, although I think the offense will do better, I think you're going to have the same situation where the Raider defense is going to have to step up in Kansas City, make some plays if they're going to keep it close and have a shot of actually upsetting this team and winning as a 13-point underdog, which would be amazing.
Scott, really quick, there's one annoying thing that Patrick Mahomes does that I can't stand. And I hate to say
the sideline thing.
He needs to get blasted for that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he get hurt, but I'm saying that when he likes to skimper on the sideline when you think he's going out of bounds and he tiptoes for another 5 to 10 yards, Raiders don't let him do that.
No.
If you see him close to the sideline, I know refs like to throw flags for penalties, and fans are gonna be screaming that the refs have it out for the Raiders. Knock him out of bounds on those plays. Do not let him tiptoe down the sideline and get an extra 10, 15 yards. I believe he did it against the Carolina Panthers last week.
Yes.
Send him a message, send him out of bounds on his butt, and let him know we're not going to let you just tiptoe down the sideline for an extra 10 to 15 yards to move the chains. Set the tone early, make your presence felt.
And don't let him get near the sideline, period.
Yeah.
That was a big run. That's what set him up for the win. So, all right. Thank you, Pastor Mike. We appreciate it. Now we're going out to a man who needs no introduction.
Yes. Go, man. Hey, down Moton. This is Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? So, I'm calling this week to be a bit of an AP apologist again. So, surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. I don't know if you guys seen that meme, but, anyway, that's what I'm doing. So, Scott, you're talking about this quote from AP, and I got to say, man, it's been blown out of proportion all over the internet, all over Facebook. Raiders social media. Nobody else cares about the Raiders right now. The Raiders social media was going crazy over AP's throwing his OC under the bus. I got to say, this is nothing new. AP has been saying this. You guys mentioned it. It's a consistent message. But AP wasn't throwing his guy under the bus or anything. He was talking about, how we want to be in a place where we aren't throwing the ball 53 times a game. And that's pretty reasonable, don't you think? But, in previous weeks, and I believe later in this week, Vinny asked him something else and he clarified. But if not, I'm just mistaken. But he has clarified this. We want to be able to run the ball more, but the problem is we're not running well. We need to start running consistently well before we can do a thing like that. And so let's cool off on that regard. But also, Mo, you mentioned something about, people are saying, injuries or whatever. I'm not talking about injuries, but the overall roster, right? Think of the talent that we have. What did we give AP? And we got all the salary cap. We didn't go into this thinking that we were going to be a playoff team. Tommy is not an idiot. Tommy Telesco knows what he's doing. We got all this cap room for a reason, guys. We're planning for next year. That's the whole thing. But we're talking about talent or injuries, whatever, keeps the team back. And you say every team has to deal with that. That's true. Every team has to deal with injuries. It's never a perfect season, right? But not every team has Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. Can you at least understand that? Every once in a while you get a guy like Mike Tomlin who gets, 2 nobody quarterbacks to 9 wins, and that's incredible. You're going to see things like that every once in a while. That's not going to be common. That's not something you should expect. So for me going into the season, I thought, 7 wins would be respectable. But we're not going to get anything like that. But it makes sense to me. That's why I'm not upset. That's why I'm not surprised, guys. We don't have a great roster. But the future looks bright because we just might have a good roster next year. We got all this money. You guys take it easy. Go Raiders.
There you go, Jacob. Go ahead, Mo. You respond first. I got my take later.
So Jacob says we weren't expecting to be a playoff team. Jacob, have you been listening to the show to some of the callers who were disappointed because they actually thought the Raiders would win 11 games. 11 games were on a lot of people's mind, and we were with you, Jacob, and we said, look, 7-8 wins tops. Now they're not even get to 6 wins. But I will say about the quarterback position, we talked about it during the offseason. The Raiders aren't going to go far with Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. But it wasn't us that felt like Aiden O'Connell was going to be the answer. We said he was a backup to begin with, and some people had an issue with that projection for him, that Aiden O'Connell is the backup. Gardner Minshew is not the answer. It's not going to take the Raiders. Gardner Minshew is not going to be the next Rich Gannon. It's not going to happen. Some people took issue with that. And I understand because of the optimism there. But if you were on the, I don't want to say objective, but if you were realistically looking at this Raider roster coming into the season, you expected it to go better than it has. You weren't expecting, Malcolm Kuntz to get hurt before week 1. You weren't expecting Devontae Adams to ask for his trade request, within a month of the season. You weren't expecting all of that. You were expecting a lot better, but you weren't also expecting a playoff team that was going to compete for a division title either. We understood that a lot of breaks had to go in the Raiders' way for them to even be in that conversation. So while it's disappointing to go through another lost season where the team has 2 wins going into December around Thanksgiving, but it's not surprising to me, I guess I could say to Jacob.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with everything you said. I also go back to his first point, which was the flap over him talking about running the ball versus passing the ball, and I brought it up on the last show because it was another kind of stunning thing, and I sense and Jacob can disagree with me respectfully, but I just sense that there's a lot of blame that happens. He doesn't do it like Josh McDaniels did it, which was a little more, I think, snide. Antonio Pierce does it more matter of fact, but this has been an issue since week 2, him saying things like this. It's like when you're the head coach, you have to be professional. To me, there's a lack of professionalism there. I'm not saying you got to be some orator. You don't have to be the guy. It's not like you have to be the best speaker in the history of the world as far as press conferences, because they're just talking to the press and you can get stuff that you need to get as a reporter. You don't have to have some big long dissertation. But we've seen this continue with all that's happened. And he backtracked on it later on when he mentioned the question from Vinny this week as well. Yeah, because it's bad. It's not good when you misspeak and you speak emotionally. I think there's an emotional intelligence thing they're lacking. This is why I don't think he's ready to be a head coach. And the record proves it. And you're right, Jacob. We didn't expect, like you, we didn't expect them to be a playoff team, but we also expected them to play games that were competitive, games where they had a chance to win. And they've had some of those, but as we said earlier, they've not put 4 quarters together. And that's not just a roster thing. All the things you're talking about with some of the players and what's happened has to do with coaching. I mean, it's not just on the players. It's a shared responsibility. So again, I disagree with you. I think this is not a position. There's 32 jobs in the entire world as head coach in the NFL. They're not internships. Those internships or getting practice, learning on the job is what you do as a position coach and then as a coordinator. That's why you go through those steps. He didn't go through those steps. So, all right. Thanks, Jacob. As always, we appreciate it, man. All right, now we're going out to Pennsylvania. This is Matt in Pennsylvania.
Hey, this is Matt calling from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So here we are, Scott and Mo. We're more than halfway through the season, and wow, what a horrible season this is. This is going to rank up there with 2006 and 2014 as one of those really low win seasons, forgettable season. So let's forget about what's currently going on, whether AOC is going to be the quarterback or Ritter's going to be the quarterback, or if we're going to beat the Jaguars or not, or if we're going to beat the Saints or not. Let's just start talking about the draft. So let's hear what you guys think about this scenario. So let's say the Raiders aren't in that top 2 pick range. Let's say that they're anywhere between 3 to 5. Let's say just the wins and losses just end up in that favor where they're a little bit farther down the board. Who do you think they would pick within that range if they can't trade up or someone else trades up above them? And then let's say they don't go for a quarterback in the first round. Well, let's say they wanted to go for a quarterback in rounds 2 onward. Would it be Beck? Would it be, not sure if he's coming out next year, the kid from Penn State. I know that a lot of talk about him. I know they run the ball more in that system, but let's just hear what your thoughts are. Who you think they would target past Sanders or Ward if they were stuck in that situation? Go Raiders.
All right, Matt in Pennsylvania. Thanks. Mo, I listen, I know maybe this isn't full reality. I don't know. You tell me. There's such a drop off after the first 2 quarterbacks. It's like the Grand Canyon to me. So if the Raiders are, let's say where they are right now, 3rd, there's one team ahead of them, the Giants, who also need a quarterback, and the Jaguars are number 1. The Jaguars aren't going to take a quarterback. We talked about this last time. So that number 1 pick, I think, is going to be in play. So you would have several teams, not just the Giants and the Raiders, but also a couple teams below them who need quarterbacks that would be vying for that number 1 pick. And I just think outside of some ridiculous, and it's a little bit different, Herschel Walker trade type stuff, the Raiders got to do everything they can to be in the top 2. I really believe that. And depending which quarterback they like, it might mean they've got to give up significant amounts of draft capitals to get where they need to be. Past that, and Matt, I'm not trying to avoid the question. I just don't, I've had somebody on the show on YouTube last night in the chat saying, well, if they can't get that guy, then maybe what do you think about Milrow? I'm like, that's not going to address your problem. The Raiders will not get over the hump until they address this problem. And yes, it's a more limited year because the class is smaller, but they got to, Mo. I mean, I don't know how else to say. I hate to be fatalistic, but
Matt, I want to avoid the question. If the Raiders do not draft a quarterback in the first round, who behind that? I'm not saying that just because Alabama got waxed by Oklahoma and Norman that I'm a little, on the fence about Jalen Milrow, but I think Jalen Milrow may need more time in school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that honestly to develop if he wants to really capitalize on his talents. I don't think he's ready yet. But if let's say the draft was tomorrow, and if I had to throw a dart and say, outside name, I would say the Penn State quarterback Drew Allen. Now, Bleacher Report has a whole scouting department. I think our guy Damien likes Drew out of Penn State. Just had to take a guess. Drew might be his number 3 guy. I know some other people have brought up Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, but I think Drew is probably gonna get a lot of publicity, a lot of buzz going into the draft evaluation process. I'm not saying that's who I think Tom Telesco likes because I have no clue who Tom Telesco likes. I would do a deep dive into what the process that he went through with the Chargers before he selected Justin Herbert. A lot of people are going to say, well, Justin Herbert fell into his lap. Let's not forget Jordan Love was also in that draft class. He could have went with Jordan Love. So I would, before I fully answer, and I hate answering questions without doing the research for it.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I would say Drew out of Penn State would be the guy to look at. Though I will say also take a look at what Tom Telesco looked for in a quarterback when he was with the Chargers, because it could give you an idea of what he's looking for in 2025 if Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders aren't available. But if the Raiders are sitting at number 3, I said this on the last show, you do what you can to get one of those top 2 spots to get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, because as you said, I agree. I think there's a big gap between those 2 quarterbacks and the rest of the class at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I agree, and I know a lot of people aren't high because of some of the performance, but you know, if they don't get that quarterback up there, do they still take a quarterback in the first round? It's tough. I mean, I still, people laugh at me, but I still like Quinn Ewers as a pro quarterback. I think I actually like him. He's a little more mobile than Aller at Penn State. But you know, I'm not saying that the Raiders should draft him. I'm just saying that I agree with you. They got to do everything they can to get up there, because if they don't get a quarterback, then you go into the same rinse and repeat cycle of what you've been through this year. And the idea that, well, maybe you draft somebody in the second round and they become the next Tom Brady. Well, again, the chances become less and less. Yes, you can have a first round bust too, that you draft number 3. But your chances are better with those types of athletes than they are waiting into the second and third round to address the most important position on the team.
One interesting scenario I think the Raiders could be in if they're still number 3 come draft time. Let's say the top 2 quarterbacks come off the board, and if you're the Raiders, do you draft Travis Hunter? And then I know it's paying me to say this because I'm saying get the quarterback, but do you draft Travis Hunter and then get your quarterback? You trade back up into the first round and get your quarterback, you know, because you can always, I mean, look at what happened with Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying there's a Lamar Jackson in this class coming up, but Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP. Some people say he should be he's going to be a 3-time MVP. He was the last pick in the first round of his class. So I understand, while I do agree with you that there's a big drop off between Cam, Shedeur, and the rest of the quarterback prospects. But if the Raiders like a guy that could be available in the late first round,
then they could do that.
Draft Travis Hunter and get that quarterback and pair that quarterback with Travis Hunter. That Travis Hunter, the way he's playing at Colorado, I know you usually want a quarterback to uplift the talent around him, but Travis Hunter feels like he can uplift a decent quarterback. As long as the quarterback isn't a bust level player, he'll make that quarterback look good and on a lot of those passes downfield. So maybe a team wants to trade up for Travis Hunter. You can get more picks, and maybe you could drop down, get your quarterback, and still get a high level playmaker at one of the skill positions. There are a lot of scenarios that can play out for the Raiders with a top 3, top 5 pick.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm saying this after all I've talked about running backs, but Ashton Jeanty too from Boise State, dude. I you know, some of you who've not watched him a lot might say, "Oh, he went to Boise State." Watch that kid. Listen, I mean, would I take him ahead of Travis Hunter? Probably not. But man, he's tough. He's good, and I don't care what conference he was in, he'd be lighting it up like he is. So yeah, there's some interesting, and the Raiders have to play that all out. They're going to have all those scenarios because you never know what happens. Somebody could leapfrog them, and suddenly you got a team jumping ahead of you for that quarterback, like the Cowboys. I mean, even though they just signed him to a big contract, you never know. You just don't know what's going to happen. So we'll see. Matt, great call. We're going to stay in Pennsylvania. We're popular in Pennsylvania. And here is Jay from Pennsylvania.
Hey guys, it's Jay from PA. Just wanted to call in and see what you guys thought about the Broncos game. Scott, I heard you and Murph talking on your post-game reaction. I'm in a tight spot here because I agree that Antonio Pierce is showing improvements, but at 2-8, 2-9, while he could lose his job, the team has nothing to lose. You're not in a playoff spot. It's like being the substitute teacher all over again last season. He went 5-4. You know, the way he coaches last season and how it's starting to look, is when the games don't really matter is when he gets aggressive. I would have liked to have seen this in the beginning of the year when there was something to play for. Now, again, he is coaching for his job. I get that. And then on the second note, I just wanted your guys' opinion on how he is doing in the division. A big selling point that I heard a ton of Raiders fans talking about was he beat the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. That was a big selling point. No one cared who was coaching the other team, Reed, Peyton, Harbaugh. A lot of Raider fans were confident that AP was going to come in and just keep rolling. And I'm sorry, but I don't think AP will ever match up to Reed, Peyton, and Harbaugh. I just want your guys' opinion on it, but I think it's time the Raiders go get themselves an actual head coach who can come in and go toe-to-toe with these guys. Get a quarterback who can come in, and obviously it's Mahomes, Herbert, and Nix. You know, they're playing well. But someone who will come in and compete. Just wanted to see what you guys thought. Love your guys' show. Appreciate you.
All right, there's Jay in Pennsylvania. We appreciate you too, man. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Interesting point there, which is, hey, when there's nothing on the line, like last year, the substitute teacher scenario is an interesting take.
It's easy to go all out when you have nothing to lose, right? Versus when the stakes are higher, or when the season is in the balance and you have a chance to make a move. So that's a good point there. And Jay also brings up the point that I brought up on the last show, is that if the Raiders go 0-6, go winless in the division, get swept by all their division rivals, you just can't survive that. If you're Antonio Pierce, I don't care what the injuries are, what the quarterback situation is. You hired that coaching staff that you partially fired mid-season. You can't get swept by every team in your division, especially after what you did last year. It's a clear regression, injuries or not. But we understood too that Antonio Pierce's resume isn't going to compare to the resumes of the coaches in that division. But as we've said over and over again, resume on the grass, right? He could make up some ground if he made things happen this year, and he hasn't. Whether completely his fault or not, when you stack up the coaches in the AFC West, you have Andy Reid with multiple Super Bowls. You have Sean Payton with a Super Bowl in his resume. You have Jim Harbaugh coming back to the pro league after winning a natty at Michigan, going to the Super Bowl with the 49ers over a decade ago. I know it was a long time ago. And I know the Chargers have a weak schedule, but they're beating the teams as they should be. And that's the first step of rebuilding or I should say establishing a culture, is winning the games you should win. And that's what the Chargers are doing. Are they a great team? No, but they're a good team already. And this is supposed to be their rebuild year. So when you're stacking up these names in the AFC West and these teams in the AFC West, Antonio Pierce is far behind. And this is what I said about having an open mind going into the offseason. Are you comfortable with Antonio Pierce and his resume competing wits, establishing chess moves, exchanging chess moves, excuse me, with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh for the foreseeable future? And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, if another head coach and candidate comes along and he has a more established resume as an offensive play caller and I'm drafting a quarterback, I'm going with that new candidate simply because he can possibly uplift my rookie quarterback, and I can then compete with the Andy Reids and the Sean Paytons and the Jim Harbaughs of the division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I said it during the Charger game before they collapsed offensively in the second half, though. I tweeted out, look, this is why when you hire a coach like Harbaugh, you get all the other coaches with them, right? You get that staff, which has been an issue for Antonio Pierce as well. And all I got was people hammering me. Oh, they're not very good. I'm like, dude, they're 7-4, not 2-9. I heard a lot of people saying how bad the Chargers were going to be, but guess what? And you're right, Mo. They're not great, but they're in the playoff run and they got 7 wins, right? So yeah, it's we'll see what happens. But I agree. I mean, you stack up those coaches in that division and you say, and even if you like Antonio Pierce, fine. But it's like learning on the job. You want to learn on the job against 2 guys who won a Super Bowl and 1 guy who won a national championship and has been to the Super Bowl. I I don't like the odds. I just don't like the odds. All right. Thanks, Jay. We appreciate it. And our last call of this day, of this Thanksgiving edition of the show, is Misha out in Orange County, California. Here's Misha.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Misha from Orange County. We're sitting at 2-9, and I've been listening to all the shows talking about the $1 million question: should AP stay? Should AP go? And I listened to the last show when Brian Baldinger was on, and he said something that really kind of like stuck out to me, at least. And I think he said, what else is he supposed to do when talking about Antonio Pierce? And I guess it stuck out to me because, before I say anything, I just want to say that I'm not going to downplay any of the, errors that Antonio Pierce has made so far. I think everything is crystal clear in terms of some of the mistakes he's made, some of the questionable decision making. He earned all that. And so, I know Scott is not, for lack of better terms, not the hugest fan. And I get Scott's point of view for sure, because I think he's very justified in his reasoning. But I'm just having a lot of trouble with this one, guys, and maybe you can kind of help me out with this, because, I'm thinking in some crazy world, I'm going to blow your minds with this one, but let's just say in some crazy world, tomorrow, Antonio Pierce becomes the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid becomes the head coach of the Raiders. Is it fair to say that Antonio Pierce is going to win more games in Kansas City because he has better personnel, more quality players on the offense, and vice versa? Is it fair to say that Andy Reid, he's a great coach, but is he going to lose more games as the coach of the Raiders because we don't have great personnel? And so the reason I ask that is because where do we draw the line when we talk about who's like where the responsibility lies? I know everybody and everything, it's multiple different things, but what do you guys think? Where do we draw the line? Who's more responsible? Take care.
All right. Misha, good question. What do you think, Mo?
So he talked about in another universe where Pierce is the coach of the Chiefs and Andy Reid is coach of the Raiders. All right. I think the Chiefs would still be a playoff team, but would they be perennial Super Bowl winners? I don't think so. Because remember how this coach staff has been constructed. And remember, when you bring, as you said, when you bring along a head coach, you bring along the staff. Patrick Mahomes didn't become great by himself. He didn't win anything on the collegiate level. He goes to Kansas City, and all of a sudden, he's unequivocally the best quarterback in the league to a lot of people. That's not by accident. Part of that is he went to a place where he has the support of the coaching staff. Andy Reid. Think about how many coaches Andy Reid has had that became head coaches on his staff, right? So that's number one. I think Andy Reid would win more games than Antonio Pierce has won with this, even with this group, with the injury, simply because Andy Reid is the primary play caller. Let's not forget that. And he has way more experience than Antonio Pierce. So there are some tricks of the trade that he would bring to the table that Antonio Pierce doesn't have yet because of the lack of experience. But he talked about, who's more responsible for where the Raiders are right now, players or coaches. I'm not going to sit on the fence with this, but it has to be, the answer is always a little bit of both. And I don't like when people point the finger at one person. I know we talked a lot about Antonio Pierce and his faults, but it's also, some of it is obviously players and execution. Mm-hmm. We talked about, we just look at Gardner Minshew, right? Now you can blame Luke Getsy for some of the ills of the offense, but we talked about it on the show. We've pulled up clips of Ted Wynn of The Athletic show examples where Gardner Minshew, the read is there for him to make the easy completion, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't let the ball go. And that's, Luke Getsy can't throw the ball for him. No. Scott Turner can't throw the ball for him. Now, we wish Gardner Minshew well, but he has his own issues. He had his own issues this year, whether it was because of lack of confidence, didn't trust the offensive line, didn't trust his teammates, whatever the case may be, right? Some of that is on Gardner Minshew. So we live in a world now where you get on social media and everyone looks for that one person to blame. And it's hardly ever one person's fault. We have to get out of it's his fault. It's AP's fault. It's Gardner Minshew's fault. No, the Raiders have a bunch of problems. This is why 2-9 teams are 2-9 teams. Bad teams are bad football teams, not because of one position. I think Malik Neighbors was in the locker room after the Giants got whooped by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he said it's not just the quarterback. And then he was insinuating that there was an issue with the play calling because, one, he didn't get his targets early in the game, but because the offense is also not running the way it should. And I think we need to get away from it's his fault. It's only his fault. And I hate to say this because I'm not trying to make this seem like it's just AP's fault or it's just Gardner Minshew's fault. But look at the Raiders roster. Look at the Raiders situation. They have no run game. They have all of these injuries. We talked about the defensive regression before the injuries. We talked about Gardner Minshew and his faults. The running backs and Zamir White, his lack of vision running the football. The offensive line, the inconsistencies there, how they've had to change around the personnel and they've had their up and down weeks. There are so many problems with the Raiders right now that you cannot just say it's this person's fault or it's that group's fault or it's this one big problem. The Raiders have to solve a bunch of problems in the offseason.
They do, and I've been saying it forever, even though people just like Misha talking about me not liking or not being a fan of, and that's not what we're here for, is to be fans of, but of Antonio Pierce, and that's it's a skepticism, absolutely, and you're right, multiple points of failure. So you have to evaluate each of those points of failure on their own. They're not one singular to blame for the malaise that this team is in at 2-9, but you have to look, okay, quarterback. Is the quarterback play his fault? Gardner Minshew. Yes. Turning the ball over. Yes. Why is he turning the ball over? Lack of confidence, confusion with the offense. Who knows? They fired the offensive coordinator. Who hired the So all of these people have points of failure. Tom Telesco signed Gardner Minshew. Now, going into this year, as I've said, the seat is already warm for Tom Telesco because if he doesn't get a quarterback in this coming draft and address that problem, guess what happens? You don't get a quarterback. Baldy said it on the show last week. You don't get a quarterback. You get a coach fired. You get a GM fired, and the quarterback gets let go, right? So all that stuff, it happens. So to me, Misha, I have to look at it from the perspective, this is how I look at it, and I think most people should. It's like, yes, all these issues, as Mo laid it out so perfectly, have to be addressed. Not one person's fault. But where do you need to get better? I think you need to get better at quarterback. I think you need to get better at offensive line. I think you need to get better at coach. And I'm going by game manager. I'm not going by record. That's the other thing. I don't go by record. I'm going by what I see, what I hear from the coach's past or lack thereof. And to me, that's how I base the point that's saying, hey, I don't think he should be back. I don't think he will be back. That's where I get that from. Not that I'm blaming him for 2-9. He has a part in it. A significant part. So does Tom Telesco. So does Gardner Minshew. So does the offense. I mean, it goes on and on. So we're not disagreeing with you, Misha. I think there's a little bit of give and take. He got into the situation. Like I said, only 32 of these jobs in the world. Are you going to turn it down because, wow, man, this team's not going to be very good next year? No, you're going to take the job, especially when you're someone who didn't rise through the usual ranks to get it. Then you're going to do it. But you also have to understand the downsides of that. And he's a big boy. He knows that. He's a smart guy. He knew the downside going in, and so that's what they're dealing with now, right? Any last words on that, Mo?
My overarching thought here is whether it's a position on the roster or coaching staff, you upgrade whenever you can. So as I've said, this is not a shot against Antonio Pierce, but if you have a candidate who's got a pretty good resume, known for developing quarterbacks or offenses, you have to have an open mind. You can't say, we're just going to stick with the status quo just because. You upgrade whenever you can upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And that's what I think they will do. We'll see how it all unfolds. But thank you to everybody for contributing to the Raider Nation Mailbag today. So make sure you call in 702-900-7869 is the number. 702-900-7869. Lay out your thoughts. Misha did a great job there, kind of just talking through what he was thinking, and all really good stuff, man. Just good stuff, good thoughts. Even if we don't agree sometimes with each other's opinions, we love hearing them because it helps us know what you're up to, what you're thinking about. So good job. Mo, what do you got? I know we got Thanksgiving, obviously, and then you have some stuff coming up this weekend, right?
Got some stuff coming up this weekend. But before we get off the air, Daniel Jones signing with the Minnesota Vikings. How about that? He's taking the backup quarterback route, looking at what Sam Darnold's doing as a bridge gap quarterback, and he's taking note of that, apparently. But I just want to say, join me if you're hearing this in time. Join me 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, my Bleacher Report Live. What can we expect out of Aiden O'Connell going forward? I'll break it down game by game of where I think he could struggle and where he could shine and what his future could look like in 2025. As always, post-game show, this time on a Friday, not a Sunday. Black Friday, Raiders and Chiefs. We talked a lot about that game today. I'll be on the post-game. And then back around, Scott, on the other side of Thanksgiving on Tuesday. We'll be back on Silver and Black Today.
Yes, we will. So we appreciate that. Make sure you follow Mo up on x.com at Moton, Moemoton. Also, make sure you check out that work up on sportsnot.com and, of course, bleacherreport.com. And this show will be out, I think, just in time so people can hear that you're going to be on live today. So if that's the case, make sure you check out his Bleacher Report Live. Best way to do it to me is in the app. I do it on Roku sometimes. You could do it on the Roku too, which is kind of cool. Anyway, but thank you for that. Also, yes, we will be back on Friday after the game, myself and Murph, and then Mo and I will be back on Tuesday. So we got a little bit of a longer weekend. No Raider game on Sunday, so that'll be interesting. But anyway, thanks for being with us. I want to also thank our producer, Mike Robier at Odyssey, and thank all of you for being with us. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. If you're watching us on one of the video platforms, make sure you subscribe there, hit that notifications bell so you know whenever we have a new video. I want to wish everybody out there a happy and safe Thanksgiving. We appreciate you. We're thankful for you, and we are thankful, God willing, we'll be back to talk to you very soon. Take care and enjoy the holiday. Bye-bye now.